What happens when a CEO steps out of his corner office, sheds his suit, and walks into his own supermarket only to uncover a truth that shakes him to his core? Let's dive into the heartfelt journey of James Carter, a man who built an empire on kindness but fears it's slipping away. Buckle up for a story of rediscovery, empathy, and the small moments that change everything. James Carter was no stranger to hard work. At 46, he was the founder and CEO of Green Valley Market, a supermarket chain that stretched across the Midwest like a patchwork quilt of small-town dreams. 20 years ago, he'd started with a single store in a dusty corner of Ohio, armed with nothing but a vision and a stubborn belief that a business could thrive by treating people right. Employees were family, customers were neighbors, and every transaction was a chance to make someone's day better. That was the Green Valley way, or at least it used to be. Now, James spent his days in a sleek high-rise office in Columbus, surrounded by glass walls and the hum of ambition. His desk, a slab of polished oak, held framed photos of his younger self, grinning in an apron, stacking apples in that first store, shaking hands with his first manager, a woman who still sent him Christmas cards. But the photos felt like relics, reminders of a time when he knew every employee's name and every customer's story. Success had brought distance, and distance brought unease. Green Valley Market was thriving. Sales reports glowed with double-digit growth, and analysts called it a model of scalability. But James couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Customer feedback forms, buried under spreadsheets, hinted at complaints. Staff too rushed, stores too impersonal. Anonymous employee surveys whispered of burnout and rigid rules. And then there was the email from his CFO, a cold, bullet-pointed missive about shareholder pressure to cut labor costs for efficiency. Efficiency. The word tasted bitter, like overbrewed coffee left too long on the burner. James leaned back in his leather chair, staring out at the city skyline. His reflection in the window looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than he remembered. He thought of his mother, Ellen, who'd raised him alone in a cramped apartment above a laundromat. She'd worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and James still recalled her struggling with heavy grocery bags, her arthritis flaring while teenage clerks chatted behind the counter, oblivious. "People need to look out for each other, Jimmy," she'd say, her voice soft but firm. That lesson had sparked Green Valley Market, a promise to build a place where no one felt invisible. But had he kept that promise? The question gnawed at him. He couldn't know from up here, sealed in a glass tower, reading reports that reduced people to numbers. He needed to see the truth for himself, to walk the aisles, hear the voices, smell the bread baking in the back. He needed to go back to where it all began. The idea hit him like a spark in dry grass. He'd go undercover. No suit, no title, just a regular guy shopping for groceries. He'd visit a store far enough away that no one would recognize him. A place where the Green Valley spirit should still shine, if it was there at all. He chose Willow Creek, a small town an hour's drive from Columbus, home to one of his mid-sized stores. He hadn't set foot there in years, not since a ribbon-cutting ceremony when the store was new, and the mayor had handed him a comically large pair of scissors. James stood, his decision made. He opened his office door and called to his assistant, Rachel, a sharp woman in her 30s who'd been with him for a decade. "Cancel my meetings for tomorrow," he said, already loosening his tie. "I'm taking a field trip." Rachel raised an eyebrow, her pen hovering over her notepad. "A field trip?" "Sir, the board's expecting your input on the cost-cutting plan by Friday. And you've got that investor call. Push it all," James said, a grin creeping on his face. It felt good to break the routine, like cracking a window in a stuffy room. "I need to get out of this office, Rachel. I need to see what's really going on in our stores." She studied him, then nodded slowly. "All right, But don't expect the board to be thrilled. Where are you going? Willow Creek, he said. And don't tell anyone. I'm going. As Mike, just Mike, Rachel's lips twitched, almost a smile. Mike, huh? Should I order you a fake mustache? James laughed, the sound surprising him. Not yet. But hold that thought. That evening, James stood in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of tailored suits like a soldier facing an unfamiliar battlefield. He pushed them aside and dug out an old plaid shirt, faded jeans, and a baseball cap he'd worn to a company picnic years ago. In the mirror, he looked like a different man, not a shy EO, but a guy who might fix your car or coach Little League. Mike, he said to his reflection, testing the name. It fit, simple and unassuming. But as he packed a small bag for the trip, doubt crept in. What if he found nothing wrong? Or worse, what if he found everything wrong, proof that Green Valley had become just another soulless chain, grinding people down for profit? And what about the board? They'd balk at any move that didn't boost the bottom line. He could hear their voices already. Sentimentality doesn't pay dividends, Carter. James sat on the edge of his bed, the cap in his hands. He thought of his mother again, her calloused hands gripping grocery bags, her quiet dignity in the face of indifference. She'd believed in him, even when he was a kid with big dreams and no plan. You've got a good heart, Jimmy, she'd said once, ruffling his hair. Don't let the world take that away. He wouldn't, not if he could help it. The next morning, James drove to Willow Creek, the city giving way to rolling hills and fields dotted with barns. The radio played a soft country tune, and he rolled down the window, letting the crisp air clear his head. Willow Creek was a postcard of small-town America, a main street with a diner, a hardware store, and a church with a white steeple. The Green Valley Market stood at the edge of town, its green sign promising fresh food, friendly faces. James parked his car, a modest rental, not his usual BM, took a deep breath. As he stepped out, the automatic doors of the store loomed. Ahead, their glass reflecting a man in a plaid shirt and cap. He wasn't James Carter, CEO, anymore. He was Mike, a regular guy with a cart and a mission. What would he find inside? A store that lived up to his vision, or one that had forgotten what Green Valley stood for? His heart thudded with a mix of hope and fear. He pushed the cart forward, the doors sliding open with a soft whoosh. The faint scent of baked bread hit him, and for a moment, he was 26 again, stocking shelves in his first store, dreaming of a better way. But this wasn't a memory. This was now, and the truth was waiting. The automatic doors of Green Valley Market slid open, and James Carter, now just Mike, a guy in a plaid shirt and baseball cap, stepped into a world he hadn't touched in years. The air carried the warm, yeasty scent of freshly baked bread, mingling with the crisp tang of apples stacked in a nearby display. Overhead, fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting a clean glow over aisles lined with canned soups, cereal boxes, and jars of marinara sauce. To anyone else, it was just a supermarket on a Tuesday morning in Willow Creek. To James, it was a mirror held up to his life's work, and he wasn't sure he'd like what he saw. He gripped the handle of his shopping cart, the metal colander, his palms, and started down the produce aisle. His eyes darted everywhere, taking in details like a detective at a crime scene. The floors gleamed, free of scuffs or spills. Lettuce heads sat crisp in their misted bins, and a young employee in a green apron rearranged bananas with care. So far, so good, James thought, a flicker of pride warming his chest. But pride was fragile, and he hadn't come here to pat himself on the back. He needed the truth, raw and unfiltered. As he rounded a corner, the store's rhythm revealed itself. Shoppers moved with purpose. A mother juggling a toddler and a grocery list, an older couple debating soup brands, a teenager in earbuds grabbing energy drinks. Employees buzzed about, some stocking shelves, others scanning items at the registers, but something felt off. The staff weren't unfriendly, exactly, but their smiles were fleeting, their eyes distracted. No one lingered to chat with customers or offer a hand. It was efficient, yes, but cold like a machine humming along without a soul. James paused by a display of tomatoes, pretending to inspect one while watching a young employee at the customer service counter. The kid, early 20s, lanky, with a name tag reading Ethan, was scanning a return for a woman in a red coat. Ethan's fingers flew over the register, but his shoulders were tense, and he kept glancing at a clipboard beside him as if it held a ticking bomb. James edged closer, catching Ethan muttering to himself, "Gotta hit the quota by noon." Quota. The word hit James like a jab to the ribs. He'd approved sales targets years ago, believing they drive performance. But had they turned his employees into number chasers, too busy to notice the people in front of them? He made a mental note to dig into that later. Before he could dwell on it, a raised voice cut through the store's hum. At the customer service counter, a tall man in a flannel jacket, mid-40s, with a weathered face, was leaning forward, his voice sharp but not cruel. His name tag was hidden, but James would later learn he was Tom, a local contractor and regular customer. Ethan stood frozen, clutching the clipboard like a shield. "This place is supposed to be about community," Tom said, his voice cracking with frustration. "You've got signs everywhere saying friendly faces, but every week I see old Walter Thompson out there struggling, and nobody lifts a finger. It's not right, kid." Ethan's face flushed, his eyes darting to the floor. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. I can go check on him now." "Check now?" Tom cut in, shaking his head. "He's been in the parking lot for 15 minutes, trying to load his groceries. He's 82, for God's sake." "Where's your manager?" James's heart thudded. He stayed by the tomatoes, blending in, but his ears were locked on a conversation. Walter Thompson. The name stirred something in him, a memory of his mother's weary hands gripping heavy bags. He wanted to step in to ask questions, but Mike wasn't supposed to know anything. So he listened, his cart forgotten. Ethan stammered, "The manager's in the back. I'll get her. Just, please, give me a second." He grabbed a walkie-talkie, his voice shaky. "Sarah, can you come to customer service? It's urgent." A moment later, a woman in her early 30s appeared, her green apron crisp, but her eyes tired. Sarah, the store manager, had a no-nonsense air, her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She glanced at Tom, then Ethan, her lips pursed. "What's going on?" Tom repeated his complaint, softer now, but no less urgent. "It's about Walter Thompson. He's out there again, barely able to carry his bags." "I've seen it too many times, Sarah. Your staff's too busy or too blind to notice. What kind of place lets an old man struggle like that?" Sarah's face tightened, but she kept her tone professional. "I'm sorry, Tom. We'll take care of it. Ethan, go help Mr. Thompson. I'll cover the counter." Ethan nodded, relief flashing across his face, and hurried toward the exit. James watched him go, then turned to Sarah, who was already scanning. A customer's return, her movements brisk. She didn't look heartless, just stretched thin, like a wire ready to snap. James wondered what pressures she faced, what rules kept her tied to that counter instead of out there helping. He couldn't wait any longer. Abandoning his cart, he followed Ethan outside, keeping his distance. The parking lot was half full, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. Near the far end, an elderly man stood by an old sedan, its trunk open. He was tall but frail, his shoulders stooped, his hands trembling as he tried to lift a heavy bag of dog food. His gray hair peeked out from a worn baseball cap, and his eyes held a quiet determination, as if asking for help was a battle he'd already lost. James's throat tightened. This was Walter Thompson, and the sight of him alone, struggling, was a punch to the gut. He quickened his pace, passing Ethan, who was still scanning the lot, unsure where to go. James reached Walter first and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let me help you with that, sir," he said, his voice low, steady. Walter looked up, startled, his blue eyes cloudy but kind. "Oh, thank you, young man. These bags don't get lighter with age, do they?" His voice was raspy, tinged with a weary humor. James smiled, lifting the dog food into the trunk with ease. "They sure don't. You got more to load?" Walter nodded, pointing to a few smaller bags in his cart. As James helped, they fell into a quiet rhythm, and Walter opened up. "This is for Rusty, my dog. He's all I've got since my wife passed. Big appetite, though. Keeps me coming back here every week." James's heart sank. He pictured Walter making this trip alone, week after week, his strength fading but his loyalty to Rusty unwavering. "Must be tough carrying all this." He said carefully, "Does anyone here ever give you a hand?" Walter shrugged, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "Folks are busy. I don't like to bother them, but it's kind of you to stop. Most people just keep walking." James loaded the last bag, his mind racing. "Most people just keep walking." The words echoed, a quiet indictment of his store, his vision. He glanced back at Ethan, who'd finally spotted them and was jogging over, out of breath. "Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry," Ethan said, his face flushed. "I didn't know you needed help." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine now, thanks to this fella," Walter said, nodding at James. "You're a good kid, Ethan. Don't worry." Ethan managed a weak smile, but his eyes were troubled. James stepped back, letting Ethan take over, and watched as Walter climbed into his car, moving slowly, like every joint ached. The sedan sputtered to life and pulled away, leaving James standing in the lot, the weight of what he'd seen settling over him like dust. He turned to Ethan, who was staring at the ground, hands shoved in his pockets. "Does that happen a lot?" James asked, keeping his tone casual, like just another curious customer. "Folks like him struggling out here?" Ethan hesitated, then sighed. "I don't. No. I mean, I'm stuck at the counter most of the time. We're not supposed to leave unless it's an emergency. I didn't even see him until that guy complained." James nodded, his jaw tight. Not supposed to leave. Another rule, another barrier between his employees and the people they served. He glanced at the store's entrance, where Sarah was visible through the glass, back at her post. The problem wasn't just one old man or one missed moment. It was deeper, woven into the fabric of how this place ran. As he walked back inside, his cart still waiting by the tomatoes, James felt a fire kindling in his chest. Green Valley Market was his legacy, built on the promise that no one would feel invisible. But Walter Thompson had been invisible until now. James didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving Willow Creek until he understood why and how to fix it. James Carter, still cloaked as Mike, the plaid-shirted shopper, pushed his cart through the aisles of Green Valley Market, the wheels' soft squeak blending with the store's hum. The encounter with Walter Thompson in the parking lot clung to him like damp air after a storm. He could still see the old man's frail hands gripping a bag of dog food, hear the quiet weight in his voice. Most people just keep walking. James had built Green Valley to be a place where no one walked by unnoticed, yet Walter had been invisible. The question gnawed at him. How had his dream drifted so far? The Willow Creek store was alive with routine scanners beeping, carts rattling, shoppers murmuring over grocery lists. But beneath the surface, James sensed a hollowness. The shelves gleamed, the produce was pristine, but the human pulse of Green Valley, the warmth he'd envisioned 20 years ago, was faint. Employees moved with mechanical precision. A cashier swiped items without meeting eyes. A stalker stacked cans with earbuds drowning out the world. Customers, too, seemed detached, navigating aisles like strangers in a crowd. James tightened his grip on the cart, his baseball cap shadowing his face. He needed to see more, to understand how deep this fracture ran. He paused by the canned goods, pretending to study a label while watching Ethan, the young clerk from the customer service counter. Ethan was back at his post, his lanky frame hunched over a clipboard, his fingers tapping nervously. The flush from the parking lot incident with Walter hadn't faded, and James caught him glancing at the clock, as if time itself was a taskmaster. Nearby, a coworker, Maria, a middle-aged woman with a worn Green Valley apron, restocked soups, her movements methodical but weary. "Rough day, huh?" Maria said, her voice low, meant only for Ethan. "Don't beat yourself up about Mr. Thompson. You couldn't leave the counter not with Sarah watching quotas like a hawk." Ethan sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I wanted to help him, Maria, but if I step away, I get a warning. I'm already behind on returns, and I need this job. Student loans don't pay themselves." Maria shook her head, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. "Tell me about it." "Last month, I got a write-up for helping a lady find gluten-free bread. Took too long, they said. Used to be, helping was the job. Now it's all numbers." James's chest tightened, Maria's words echoing his mother's struggles. Ellen Carter had faced the same indifference years ago, her arthritis making grocery trips a trial while clerks prioritized tasks over people. He'd started Green Valley to change that, to make every customer feel seen. Yet here, in his own store, kindness was a risk. He moved on, his cart a shield, but the fire of guilt was kindling inside him. In the bakery aisle, the scent of warm bread stirred memories of his first store, where he'd chatted with customers and known every employee's name. Now he was a stranger, and the distance stung. He spotted Sarah, the young manager, near the deli, her tablet glowing with data as she spoke to a worker. "We're short on pre-orders," she said, her voice clipped but not unkind. "Can you push the ham specials? Corporate's on me about sales." The worker nodded, his face blank, and hurried back to the counter. James lingered, feigning interest. "In a baguette." Sarah's walkie-talkie crackled, and he caught her response, tense and low. "Yes, I know the reports do. We're trying, but we're down 2 staff today. I need more hours approved." A pause, then a sharp, "I'll figure it out." She pocketed the device, her jaw tight, and moved to the next task, her ponytail swinging like a metronome. Sarah's strain was familiar. James had felt it himself, years ago, when Green Valley was a single store and every penny counted. But this wasn't just about budgets. It was a system he'd let grow rigid, tying managers and employees to quotas and rules that choked out care. He thought of Walter again, alone in the parking lot, and then of Tom's confrontation at the counter. What kind of place lets an old man struggle like that? The answer was clear, a place he'd failed to protect as he wove through the store. James's observations piled up like stones. A father asked a cashier for help finding diapers, only to get a vague wave toward an aisle. An elderly woman struggled with a heavy jug of milk, unnoticed by a passing stalker. Small moments, but they wove a pattern of neglect. Each one chipped away at the promise he'd made to his mother, whose calloused hands and quiet dignity had inspired Green Valley. "People need to look out for each other, Jimmy," she'd said. He'd let her down. Guilt surged, but so did doubt. Was this just Willow Creek, or was every Green Valley store like this? Could he change a company this size based on one day's glimpse? The board's voice echoed in his mind, cold and pragmatic. "Empathy doesn't pay dividends, Carter." The CFO's email about cutting labor costs loomed, a reminder of the battle ahead. He felt torn. Part of him wanted to storm into Sarah's office, reveal himself, and demand change. Another part, the the one shaped by his mother's patience, knew he needed to listen, to understand, before acting. Then, a sharp voice snapped him back. At the front, Tom, the contractor who called out Ethan, was at the counter again, facing Sarah. "It's not just Walter," Tom said, his tone firm but pained. "I saw Clara out there, lugging her bags. She's 75, Sarah. This store's supposed to care. What happened?" Sarah's face flushed, but she kept her composure. "I'm sorry, Tom. We're addressing it. I'll send someone to help Clara now." Tom shook his head. "You keep saying that, but it's not enough. This place isn't what it was." James stood frozen, his cart forgotten. Tom's words were a knife, cutting through his defenses. Green Valley wasn't a home anymore, not for Walter, not for Clara, not for the staff trapped by his rules. The pickle jar incident from earlier flashed in his mind, a mother cleaning up alone while a cashier looked away. It wasn't one moment. It was a culture he'd let erode. His guilt hardened into resolve, but doubt lingered. Changing Green Valley meant fighting corporate inertia, skeptical employees, and his own fear of failure. He thought of his mother's hands, rough from years of work, and her unwavering belief in him. Could he find that strength again? He didn't know, but he couldn't walk away, not now. Not when he'd seen the truth. James pushed his cart toward the checkout, the bread scent fading behind him. The store's hum felt louder now, a challenge he couldn't ignore. Walter, Ethan, Sarah, Tom, they were why he was here. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing: Green Valley Market had to change, and it started with him. The aisles of Green Valley Market were nearly empty now, the evening rush fading into a quiet hum as closing time approached. James Carter still cloaked as Mike. The plaid-shirted shopper stood near the checkout, his cart abandoned, its contents a forgotten prop. The day's weight pressed against him. Walter Thompson's frail struggle in the parking lot. Ethan's fear of breaking rules. Sarah's strained efficiency. And Tom's piercing words. This store used to feel like home. Now it's just a store. Each moment was a shard, cutting into the vision he built Green Valley Market to embody. He couldn't hide behind Mike any longer. It was time to step into the light. James's heart thudded as he approached the customer service counter, where Sarah was reviewing a clipboard, her ponytail slightly askew, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. Ethan was nearby, wiping down the counter, his movements slow, as if the day's stress had sapped his energy. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting a stark glow over the scene. James took a deep breath, steadying himself. He'd come to Willow Creek to see the truth, and now he had to face it not as a bystander, but as the man responsible for this store, this company, this failure. "Sarah," James said, his voice calm but firm, like a man stepping onto a tightrope. "Can we talk? In private, please?" Sarah glanced up, her brow creasing as she took in his worn jeans and baseball cap. "Is this about a purchase, sir?" "Ethan can help with. It's not about a purchase," James said, meeting her eyes. "It's about the store. I'd like to speak in your office, if you don't mind." Her expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing her face. She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, this way." She led him through a door marked "Employees Only," her posture stiff, as if bracing for a complaint. James caught Ethan's glance, the young man's eyes wide with curiosity, perhaps wondering if this customer was about to stir trouble. The manager's office was a small, cluttered space, smelling faintly of paper and stale coffee. A desk was buried under schedules, receipts, and a flickering monitor displaying sales data. Sarah closed the door and leaned against the desk, her arms crossed. "So, what's this about?" she asked, her tone professional but guarded. "If it's about Mr. Thompson, I've already sent Ethan to check on him, and we're addressing it." James removed his cap, the gesture feeling like shedding a skin. His graying hair caught the light, and he stood straighter, no longer the unassuming Mike. "It's about Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice steady, "and Clara, and the mother with the broken pickle jar. But it's also about Ethan, and you and every person in this store who's been let down by a system I created. My name isn't Mike. It's James Carter, CEO of Green Valley Market." Sarah's face drained of color, her hands dropping to her sides. "You're the CEO?" She stammered, her eyes darting over him as if searching for proof. "You're serious?" James nodded, pulling a business card from his wallet and handing it to her. The Green Valley logo gleamed under the fluorescent light, his name embossed in bold letters. Sarah's fingers trembled as she took it, her breath catching. "I came here undercover," James continued, "because I needed to see what's happening in my stores. And what I saw today isn't what I built Green Valley for. Customers are struggling, employees are scared, and we've lost the heart of what makes us different." Sarah sank into a chair, clutching the card like a lifeline. "Mr. Carter, I don't know what to say. If this is about the complaints, I'm sorry. We're trying, but we're understaffed, and corporate's quotas are—" "I know," James interrupted gently, sitting across from her, "and I'm not here to blame you. Those quotas, those rules, they came from decisions I made or let others make. But they've turned this store into a place where an 82-year-old man struggles alone in a parking lot. That's all me. I need to understand how we got here, Sarah, and I need your help." Her eyes glistened, and she looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been manager for 6 months. It's been overwhelming. Sales targets, reports, keeping everyone in line. I want to help customers like Mr. Thompson, but if I miss a deadline, corporate calls. I feel like I'm failing everyone." James's heart ached. Sarah wasn't the problem. She was a victim of the same broken system that had failed Walter. "You're not failing," he said softly. "You're doing what you can with what you've been given. But we need to change this. Together. Can we gather the staff? I want to hear from them now, before the store closes." Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'll call them in." Minutes later, James stood in the break room, a cramped space with a sagging couch, a coffee-stained table, and a vending machine humming in the corner. About 15 employees, cashiers, stockers, deli workers crowded in, their faces a mix of confusion and wariness. Ethan hovered near the door, his arms crossed, while Maria, the veteran stalker, sat up front, her expression curious. A burly man in his 50s, John, leaned against the wall, his name tag crooked, his eyes narrowed. Sarah stood beside James, her voice shaky as she spoke. "Everyone, this is Mr. James Carter, the CEO. He's been here today, observing us." A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Ethan's jaw dropped, and Maria's hand froze on her coffee cup. John's voice cut through, gruff and skeptical. "The CEO? What's this? Some kind of surprise inspection? You here to fire us?" James raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "No one's getting fired, John. I came here as a customer to see the truth, and I saw a store that's lost its way. I saw Walter Thompson, an elderly man, struggling with groceries for his dog, Rusty, because no one noticed him. I saw Clara, another senior, ignored in the parking lot. I saw a mother cleaning up a broken pickle jar alone while we focused on quotas. This isn't what Green Valley Market was built for." He paused, scanning the room, meeting each pair of eyes. "I started this company because of my mother. She was like Walter, proud, struggling, often overlooked. I wanted Green Valley to be a place where people felt seen, where you felt empowered to care. But we've drifted. Rules and numbers have taken over, and that's my fault. I'm here to fix it, but I need to hear from you." The silence was thick, broken only by the vending machine's hum. Maria spoke first, her voice soft but clear. "Mr. Carter, I've been here 12 years. I used to love helping customers, like the time I walked an elderly lady through the store, picking out ingredients for her grandson's birthday cake. She hugged me after. But now, we're told to stay at our posts, hit sales targets, or get written up. It's hard to care when you're scared of losing your job." James nodded, her words echoing his mother's struggles. "I'm sorry, Maria. Those rules weren't meant to stop you from doing what's right. What else?" Ethan shifted, his voice tentative. "I want to help people like Mr. Thompson, but I'm stuck at the counter, and if I leave, I get in trouble. I'm working to pay off student loans, and I can't risk getting fired. Maybe if we had someone assigned to help customers, it'd be easier," Sarah added, her voice steadier now. "Ethan's right. We need more staff. I've been asking corporate for extra hours, but they keep denying it. We're stretched so thin, we can't do everything." But John wasn't swayed. He stepped forward, his arms crossed tightly. "Talk's cheap, Mr. Carter. You're up in Columbus while we're down here, drowning in quotas you signed off on. You want us to help every customer? Fine, but whose? Helping us? Add more work, and we'll burn out. You gonna fix that from your fancy office?" The room tensed, eyes darting between John and James. John's words stung, but James saw the truth in them. Change wasn't just about inspiring speeches. It was about dismantling a system he'd let grow unchecked. He thought of his mother's quiet strength, her calloused hands gripping bags, and found his voice. "You're right, John," James said, his tone earnest. "I've been too far from the ground, and I let corporate priorities overshadow what matters. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until we start fixing this. More staff, better training, less pressure. I'm taking your ideas to the board. I know trust is earned, not given. Hold me accountable." John's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained guarded. Maria nodded, a spark of hope in her gaze, and Ethan uncrossed his arms. Sarah's shoulders relaxed, a faint smile breaking through Dodd as the meeting ended. The staff filed out, some whispering, others silent. Sarah lingered, her hands clasped. "Mr. Carter, I want this store to be what you meant it to be. Thank you for seeing us." "You're not alone in this, Sarah," James said, offering a reassuring nod. "We'll do this together." He stepped outside into the cool night, the Green Valley sign glowing above. The parking lot was empty, but Walter's memory lingered, a reminder of why he was here. The board would resist, John would doubt, and the path ahead was steep. But for the first time in years, James felt alive, driven by a promise to his mother, to people like Walter, to make Green Valley a home again. The Willow Creek Green Valley Market stood quiet under the early morning sun, its green sign catching the light as James Carter pulled into the parking lot. Gone was the plaid shirt and cap of Mike. Today, he wore a simple button-down. His CEO title no longer a secret. The confrontation with Sarah, Ethan, Maria, and John the night before had lit a fire in him, but it was Walter Thompson's trembling hands and quiet dignity that fueled his resolve. James had promised to make things right, not just for Walter, but for every customer and employee who'd been let down by a system he'd allowed to drift. Today was about action. Inside, the store was prepping to open. The air filled with the familiar scent of fresh bread and the soft clatter of restocking shelves. James met Sarah in her office, where she was already sorting schedules, her eyes brighter than yesterday's strain. "Mr. Carter," she said, standing. "I wasn't sure you'd be back so soon." "I meant what I said, Sarah," James replied, his voice steady. "We're starting today. I've drafted a plan to overhaul how we operate, but it begins here in Willow Creek." He handed her a document outlining immediate changes, a trial program to assign staff to assist elderly and disabled customers, relaxed quotas to ease employee pressure, and a request for corporate to approve additional staff hours. "This is just the start," he said. "I need you to lead this store in putting people first again." Sarah scanned the document, her expression a mix of hope and caution. This could work. But corporate's been tough on budgets. Will they go for it? "They'll have to," James said, his jaw tight. "I'm taking this to the board myself. If they want Green Valley to thrive, they'll see this is the way." By mid-morning, James called a brief staff huddle, explaining the new program. "Starting today, we're prioritizing customers who need extra help," he said, facing a small group of employees, including Ethan and Maria. "Ethan, you mentioned wanting to help people like Mr. Thompson. You're on the first shift for customer assistance. Maria, I'd like you to train others on how to spot those who need us most." Ethan's eyes widened, a shy smile breaking through. "I can do that, Mr. Carter." Maria nodded, her usual wariness softened. John, the skeptic from last night, stood at the back, arms crossed but listening. James caught his eye, knowing trust would take time. But the most pressing task wasn't in the store, it was with Walter Thompson. James had learned Walter's address from Sarah, who'd pulled it from customer records. Armed with a plan and a personal mission, he drove to a quiet street on the edge of Willow Creek, where modest houses lined the road, their lawns dotted with fading summer flowers. Walter's home was a small bungalow, its paint peeling, but the porch swept clean. A rusty mailbox bore the name Thompson. James knocked, a grocery bag in hand, 6 months' worth of dog food and essentials, a gesture he hoped would mean something. The door creaked open, revealing Walter, his gray hair untidy, his eyes surprised but warm. Behind him, a scruffy golden retriever wagged its tail, its fur flecked with gray. "Well, if it isn't the young man from yesterday," Walter said, his voice raspy but kind. "What brings you here?" "Call me James," he said, offering a smile. "This is for you and Rusty, and I owe you an apology." He stepped inside. At Walter's gesture, the living room cozy but worn, with faded photos on the mantel and a dog bed by the window. Rusty nuzzled James's hand, tail thumping. "An apology?" Walter asked, easing into an armchair. "You helped me with those bags. Nothing to apologize for." James set the groceries down, his throat tight. "I'm the CEO of Green Valley Market. I saw you struggling yesterday, and it hit me hard. My mother was like you, proud, but needing a hand no one offered. I built Green Valley to be different, but we failed you. I'm here to make it right." Walter's eyes widened then, softened. "CEO, huh? Well, you don't act like one." He chuckled, patting Rusty's head. "Rusty's my family now since my wife passed. My grandson gave him to me before well, he's gone too. These trips to your store are tough, but I do it for him." James's heart sank, picturing Walter's solitary routine. "I'm sorry," he said. "From now on, we'll deliver your groceries for free. And we're starting a program to help customers like you carrying bags, finding items, whatever you need." Walter's hand shook slightly, not from weakness but emotion. "That's more than I expected." "Thank you, James. Rusty and I were grateful." As James left, Rusty's tail wagged in farewell, and Walter's handshake felt like a promise. Sealed. Back at the store, Sarah reported early signs of change. Ethan had helped an elderly woman, Clara, with her shopping, earning a grateful smile. Maria was training 2 cashiers to spot customers needing assistance. The community was noticing Tom, the contractor, stopped by to thank Sarah. His usual gruffness softened, but James knew the real test lay ahead. That afternoon, he got a call from his CFO in Columbus, voice clipped. "James, the board's worried about your experiments in Willow Creek. Adding staff and cutting quotas could tank our margins. You sure about this?" "I've never been sure," James said, picturing Walter's weary eyes. "This is what Green Valley is about. They'll see the numbers follow when customers trust us again." The call ended with a tense pause, but James felt unshaken. He looked out at the store, where Ethan was helping a customer with a heavy bag, and Maria was laughing with a child. The fire from last night burned brighter. This was just the beginning. A year had passed since James Carter stepped out of his high-rise office in Columbus and into the aisles of the Willow Creek Green Valley Market, disguised as Mike. The memory of that day of Walter Thompson's trembling hands, Ethan's quiet fear, Sarah's strained efficiency, and Tom's pointed words still burned brightly in his mind. It had been a reckoning, a mirror held up to a company he'd built with his mother's wisdom in his heart. People need to look out for each other, Jimmy. Now, standing in the same parking lot where he'd first helped Walter, James felt a quiet pride. Green Valley Market was changing, and Willow Creek was where it had all begun. The store looked much the same on the surface. The green sign glowed under the autumn sun. The automatic doors whooshed open with a familiar hum and the scent of fresh bread greeted customers. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. The customer assistance program James had launched after his undercover visit had taken root, not just in Willow Creek, but across every Green Valley market. Employees were trained to spot customers needing help, elderly shoppers, parents with young children, anyone struggling, and a dedicated team, led by Ethan in Willow Creek, made sure no one felt invisible. Quotas had been relaxed, staff hours increased, and training now emphasized empathy as much as efficiency. The changes weren't perfect, but they were real. Inside, the store buzzed with a warmth James hadn't felt that first day. Ethan, no longer chained to the customer service counter, moved through the aisles with a new confidence, helping a young mother load groceries into her cart while her toddler giggled. Maria, the veteran stalker, was training a new hire, her voice patient as she explained how to spot a customer in need. Sarah, now a seasoned manager, stood near the bakery, chatting with a regular customer about a new recipe. Her ponytail was less severe, her smile less forced. Even John, the skeptic who'd challenged James in the break room, had softened, volunteering to lead weekly training sessions on customer care. The numbers told a story, too. Customer satisfaction scores had climbed steadily over the year, and loyalty program sign-ups surged as shoppers returned, drawn by a store that felt like a community again. Sales held strong, not because of aggressive targets, but because people trusted Green Valley to care. James had faced the board in Columbus, armed with data and stories. Walter Thompson's gratitude, Clara's relieved smile, Tom's newfound respect. The CFO had grumbled, but the numbers spoke louder than skepticism. "You were right," he'd admitted grudgingly. "This is working." But for James, the real victory wasn't in spreadsheets. It was in the people. He'd made a habit of visiting stores across the chain, no longer content to stay in his glass tower. Each visit brought new stories. A cashier in Dayton who'd helped a blind customer plan a holiday meal. A stalker in Cleveland who'd carried groceries for a disabled veteran. Green Valley was becoming a home again, one small act at a time. The heart of it all, though, was Walter Thompson. James had kept his promise, ensuring Walter's groceries were delivered weekly, free of charge. But their connection went deeper. James had visited Walter's bungalow several times over the year, often bringing a treat for Rusty, the scruffy retriever who'd become a quiet mascot for the store's transformation. Today, Willow Creek was hosting a community event, a harvest fair in the parking lot, complete with local vendors, a pet adoption booth, and a food drive. James had invited Walter, hoping he'd come as the fair kicked off. The lot filled with families, laughter echoing over the clink of cider mugs and the strum of a local band. James stood by a booth handing out Green Valley tote bags, watching. Sarah organized volunteers with ease. Ethan was at the pet booth, scratching Rusty's ears as Walter stood nearby, leaning on a cane but smiling broadly. Clara, the elderly woman Tom had mentioned, was there too, chatting with Maria about knitting. Tom himself helped set up tables, his gruff demeanor replaced by a quiet pride in his town store. James approached Walter, who was sipping cider, Rusty sprawled at his feet. "Glad you made it, Walter," James said, crouching to pet the dog. "Rusty looks happy," Walter chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "He's spoiled now, thanks to you. Never thought I'd see a store care this much. You've done right by us, James." The words hit James like a warm wave. He thought of his mother, Ellen, who never lived to see Green Valley grow, but whose spirit guided every step of this journey. "I'm just keeping a promise," he said softly, "to someone who taught me what matters." The fair ended with a speech from Sarah, who thanked the community for embracing the store's changes. As the crowd applauded, James caught Ethan's eye, the young man now planning to stay with Green Valley long-term, inspired by a job that felt meaningful. Maria, too, had found her spark again, mentoring new hires with stories of the old days. Even John clapped, his skepticism replaced by a grudging respect. As the sun set, James stood alone in the parking lot, the fair winding down. The Green Valley sign glowed above, a beacon of what he'd fought to reclaim. He thought of Walter's handshake, Sarah's growth, Ethan's confidence, and the countless customers whose lives were a little easier now. Success wasn't just profit margins or store expansions, it was people, their stories woven into the fabric of Green Valley. Friends, this is more than a story about a supermarket. It's a reminder that businesses at their core are about people. James Carter's journey shows us what happens when we lose sight of that truth and what's possible when we fight to bring it back. Walter Thompson, with his quiet strength and love for Rusty, represents every person who's ever felt invisible. Sarah, Ethan, Maria, and even John show us the challenges and rewards of working in a system that can either stifle or inspire. The lesson here is simple but profound. Kindness isn't just a gesture. It's a choice that ripples outward, changing lives, rebuilding trust, and creating communities. James's story teaches us to listen, to notice, to act. Whether you're a CEO or a cashier, you have the power to make someone's day better, to make them feel seen. It's not about grand gestures, but small, consistent acts like helping with a bag, offering a smile, or challenging a system that's lost its way. Green Valley Market became a home again because one man dared to step down from his office and into the lives of those he served. What can we do in our own corners of the world to make that difference? If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're reading from. It's amazing to see how stories like this connect us across the globe. And if you want more tales of heart, hope, and change, hit that subscribe button for legacy stories. We're here to share the kind of stories that remind us what it means to be human. For a little extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you in the next one.